horrific scenes coming out of Syria, which I'm not going to show you, of Christians being crucified and then being executed via gunshot to the head, and other sort of humiliating and torturous rituals that are occurring to minority populations there. This is the result of the Western world backing the noble rebels, aka Islamic extremists, that now control Syria. And this is something that often happens. Remember, we have memos from way back when that were suggesting that Al Qaeda is actually our ally in Syria. We were arming Al Qaeda al Nursa. We have WikiLeaks that show that Hillary Clinton email suggested that if Assad was overthrown, that there would face systemic extermination of Christian populations in Syria. Now, listen, I'm not here to claim Assad's a great man. Oftentimes, what happens is when you denounce sort of the attacks you're seeing now in Syria, you get attacked as, oh, so you're supporting the dictator that was there before. No, what I'm suggesting is, how many times are we going to see the United States and Western governments back noble rebels that end up being bloodthirsty maniacs that then attack the domestic population? For example, we could go back and we could see this in Afghanistan with the arming of the Mujahideen, which then later, years later, we were told we now have to send military in to fight what became of them. Or how about in Libya, where we were told how bad Gaddafi was, and Gaddafi was pleading with the Western world that it wasn't rebels within his own country, but actually Islamic extremists from outside of his country that were those being armed to fight him. And then that country went from having one of the highest literacy rates in Africa and home ownership being a human right to now having open air slave markets. Now, the point is, the Western leaders that tell you in places like Ukraine and elsewhere, oh, we have to defend democracy. Oh, it's all about doing the moral thing for the local population. They're lying to you. They don't care. They'll happily back bloodthirsty maniacs if they think it helps benefit what their agenda is. And their agenda almost never is for the benefit of the local people on the ground, or even for the average people back home in countries like the United States. It helps them, it helps their military industrial complex, but it doesn't actually help the actual people on the ground. And so now we're seeing the fruits of that once again in Syria, and don't worry, it'll be swept under the rug. We'll be told it's not that bad. See, things are good now. It'll be swept under the rug, and if you ever hear about Syria again, it'll be 10 to 15 years from now, where we'll be told, now we have to put troops on the ground, or we have to drop bombs, etc. Because, you know, those people we armed 10 years ago and helped lead to a revolution which now control the country? Well, it turns out that was bad. Now we have to go fight them. But the same people that make these decisions will never admit their own culpability. They'll always say, oh, there's a problem that we caused. Well, I guess you have to give us new powers so that we could go combat that problem. It's time for the United States and the Western world to stop engaging in these sorts of revolutions, because it almost always leads to bloodthirsty maniacs taking over and causing harm. Blood is on the hands of the West that did this, and they ought to be ashamed of themselves.